Hi, I'm Todd Nash, President of Oregon Cattlemen's Association, here today with our contract lobbyist, Rocky Dallum. And first of all, Rocky, before we get into this, Veterans Day today, I just wanted to say how much I appreciate the veterans, not only in my life, but everywhere. We couldn't do what we do without you guys, and we're constantly reminded of that. So appreciation to all of you veterans out there today. Rocky, you want to introduce yourself for those that may not have met you before?
Yeah, Rocky Dallum. I'm an attorney at Tonkin Torp in Portland, but spend almost entirely all of my professional time working in advocacy, so lobbying, working with our policymakers in the state legislature, the governor's office, the executive branch, and from time to time, some local government work around the state as well. And I've been representing Oregon Cattlemen's Association since the beginning of 2016. So we're pushing the start of our 7th year here coming around the corner, and worked with a lot of great folks at OCA around issues that ranching families, our rural communities, and our producers care about. So thanks for having me, Todd.
Yeah, thank you, Rocky. It's been wonderful to have you all that time too. Rocky, I want to talk a little bit about how the governor's race shaped up, and there's a few votes to be counted, but maybe some of those trends and the reality of that first.
Yeah, I'll start with the governor's race. As of right now, the media outlets have called the race for Tina Kotek, former House Speaker, with Christine Drazen down. Christine Drazen right now, as of the last report, is down, I think, about 65,000 votes. And there aren't a ton of votes still out there, although we don't know for sure because of the postmark date. There could be ballots that still trickle in. But given the counties that have reported and the population, it looks pretty difficult for Drazen to make up that ground, which is why I think most people and most observers agree that Tina Kotek will be our next governor. But the reality is, while it's going to be within several percentage points, the ultimate final vote tally, we will have a governor for maybe the second time in state history. I'd have to go back and look. That becomes governor without receiving a majority of the votes. So what you're already hearing from the Kotek camp is they're ready to start a transition, that they want to focus on homelessness as their #1 priority. And from Speaker Kotek herself is that she wants to be a governor for all Oregonians. I think after this election season, people are thirsty for that. We'll see how it plays out once we actually get into the Capitol and she starts her tenure as our governor come early January.
Well, that's hopeful news. Thanks, Rocky. The House and the Senate, and so there's been a super majority there held by the Democrats for a time, and how is that shaping up now, and what does that look like there?
Yeah, I'll take the House first just because it's got more members. And if you look at what happened over the course of the week, both in the state and nationally, there was a lot of expectation that Republicans had a lot of momentum. You know, historically, you look at the trends that Republicans would have a big week in picking up seats, both on the national level and here in Oregon. Although when I talk about the House of Representatives, I think most folks thought that it was likely that the Democrats would hold on to their majority, just given the profile of the districts. We've got more Democrats in Oregon than we do Republicans by about 300,000. Now, there's a lot of non-affiliated voters, and based on the way that those districts are put together, there are very few seats that are truly competitive. One thing that I think is going to be interesting when we look at the national trend and compare Oregon is that Republicans will have picked up seats despite the fact that the gubernatorial candidate, the Republican, didn't win, that in the state legislature, Republicans gained some ground. The House currently, before the election, sits 37 Democrats to 23 Republicans. That's one vote more than needed for a 3/5 supermajority to pass tax increases unilaterally without Republican votes. It looks like, as of where we sit right now, that Republicans are going to net 2 seats. Republicans did well to pick up a couple seats in the Willamette Valley, particularly the Salem area. It looks like 2 of those House seats that were currently Democrats are going to flip to Republican. Same within the Columbia River Gorge. Looks like there's one race where the Republican is going to take back Jeff Helfrich, a former state representative. Looks like he might actually hold off and win his election out in the Gorge. On the flip, it looks like the Democrats will have flipped a seat in Central Oregon. I think interesting because for those of you who are east of the Cascades, there will now be 2 Democrats, it looks like, that are coming from Central Oregon. And I think that really shows the growth and the change in the Bend and Redmond area, that it looks like Redmond's going to have a Democratic representative as well. So ultimately in the House, it looks like we'll have 35 Democrats to 25 Republicans. That's still a pretty big spread, but not that supermajority spread where Democrats can unilaterally pass tax increases. And I think we're going to get a few more moderate candidates back from the Democrats, at least in the metro area, from Lake Oswego and some other places where you might not have as partisan folks as we do on either side. So not the gains that expected, but still Republicans making more progress to get back to even over the course of this election cycle. On the Senate side, similar story, although we're still waiting and folks aren't sure how things are going to finally come out. I think there was political observers and consultants like myself saw a pathway to where it could come out 15-15 potentially, where you'd have an evenly divided Senate. As it stands right now, it looks like Democrats are in the driver's seat for 16 seats. There are 12 seats that Republicans look to have held on safely. There's also one independent, Brian Boquist, down in Polk County, who is part of the independent party, but tends to vote and align more closely with Republicans. So when we say it's right now, looks like it's 16-12 with an additional vote, so 16-13. And then the Clackamas County race between incumbent Bill Kennemer and Representative Mark Meek, who's the challenger, is within several hundred votes. Clackamas County is delivering vote totals once a day, so it's a very slow trickle, but they did announce last night that they intend to keep counting on Saturday. So we may find out the result of that race. And that really depends on, are those final votes coming from more rural parts of Clackamas County? Are they coming from precincts that are in the more urban parts? But it's neck and neck, and that's probably going to go down, at least for this cycle, now as the most expensive state Senate race in Oregon history, topping somewhere over $4 million. So either way, Republicans will have netted 1 seat, potentially 2 seats as they go into session. So the theme for the election, the big theme in Oregon is the governor's race was close, but the Democrats held serve. In the legislature, Republicans didn't have the type of momentum that people thought maybe they could, but they did net some seats, which gets us a little bit closer to partisan balance, if not full partisan balance. But the loss of the supermajorities will make a difference in the way that some of these votes function when we get into session.
Okay, thanks for all that, Rocky. That's a pretty comprehensive look at that. So we had a new district federally. Do you want to talk about that a little bit and how that's shaping up?
Yeah, interesting in our congressional races, because as you saw the money flowing from the East Coast into Oregon, there were a lot of folks outside of Oregon who really saw Oregon as a pivot point, and it still could be at this late hour for the control of Congress. Similar theme nationally is, there was a lot of momentum in polling and media, and folks thought that Republicans would really gain a lot of seats, certainly take over the House federally, and then the chance of taking over the Senate. We're not going to have an answer to that until early next month. But here in Oregon, we had 3 seats. First, the 4th district, the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd, all relatively safe. Suzanne Bonamici, Cliff Bentz in the 2nd district, and then Earl Blumenauer. They're incumbents. They were facing challengers, but they, as expected, won their races. The 4th district leans Democratic, includes Lane County and Eugene, so Democrats had an advantage. That technically was an open seat because Peter DeFazio retired. Val Hoyle, as expected, won that race. The 5th district is the really interesting one here in Oregon, not yet our new district, but if folks recall, Kurt Schrader was the incumbent, relatively popular, moderate. He was primaried by Jamie McLeod Skinner, who's familiar to, I think, a lot of folks. She's now run for Secretary of State and the 2nd Congressional District, so a well-known candidate. Her opponent, Lori Chavez DeRemer, former mayor of Happy Valley. That was a highly contested race for a while. About 3 weeks ago, we saw Democrats move some of their money out of that race and focus on the 6th district, which is the new congressional district. As it stands right now, Chavez DeRemer continues to hold a slight lead in that race. Same story with the state Senate race, as a lot of those votes are in Clackamas County, which still has to finalize its tallying and its reporting. So It hasn't been called. Chavez DeRemer has maintained a lead for a good part of that race. But that could be, as we get more results from states around the West over the coming days, really could be one of these races that that shapes how the Republican and the Democratic caucuses look and what the actual final split in Congress is. Similarly, our 6th district, which is the brand new district, which is the Salem area, Willamette Valley, and parts of Southwest Portland, is the race between Andrea Salinas, former House representative here in Oregon, versus Mike Erickson, a businessman out of Tigard. Salinas has continued to hold a slight edge. There are still some votes coming in from Marion County. I think the safest guess is that Salinas probably holds on to that. But it will be interesting that Oregon will have 2 Republicans in its congressional delegation, which hasn't been the case since Gordon Smith retired back about 12 years ago. So still close in the congressional races. I think the one that's probably going to get the most closely watched will be the Chavez DeRemer versus McLeod Skinner, and it looks like Chavez DeRemer may hold that out. And we'll get more confirmation tonight or tomorrow night on that.
Okay, thanks, Rocky. A few unknowns, but it certainly looks like it's going to shape up to hold kind of the way it is right now. But it's been kind of a long slog here. A lot of anticipation of maybe some major changes. I know that there's some people that are very disappointed, and probably some people that are very happy with the way that it all shaped up. But we appreciate all your work and all your advice and everything you do for us. Do you have any closing thoughts?
Yeah, leading up to the election, folks and clients I talk to, I think many of us and, members in organizations like OCA are reminding everybody to get their ballots in and turn their votes in. That couldn't be more true. What I want to remind folks as we flip over here into the policymaking side after a really contentious election, and the theme that I think we feel in Oregon, whether or not you're in Wallowa County or Douglas County or Multnomah County, I think there's a lot of folks who are disheartened with the way that our political system is functioning right now and the way the parties are operating. First of all, even if the vote that you turned in didn't come out with the candidate who ultimately won, having that voter turnout, having that participation, I think allows people like myself and leadership at OCA to talk with folks like our new governor, leadership in the legislature, and say, listen, you can't get 100% of what you want 100% of your time because you've got, at least from the governor's perspective, you got 52% of the voters who turned out who wanted to see something different. Let's be a governor for those people. And same on the legislative side is the reason we had such a contentious election is because we had so many contentious issues on the policymaking side. How can we focus on issues that make things better for Oregonians as opposed to just trying to get the way for their bases? And I think there's a lot of folks that expressed in this election that people are, not right down the middle, but there's a lot more people that have an opinion than what we hear on the sides, either on the left or the right. We have an entire government here that needs to function. So my closing thoughts for OCA members, particularly and others watching, is stay engaged, email your legislators, whether they're new or old, introduce yourself. The squeaky wheel always gets greased. So the more people who participate in the process, the more they can be heard, and the more that people will respond. So stay engaged in the process. This is part of it. It's always hard to adjust and digest everything we're going to learn from this election. I think we're going to talk about what the difference was in this election for the next 3 or 4 months, why maybe you didn't see as big of a push from Republicans as people thought, and what that means for Democrats. But stay engaged with organizations like OCA, and please continue your communications and your outreach to your policymakers.
Okay, thank you, Rocky. Very relevant, pertinent wrap up there, and we will. We'll keep engaging. We need our members to engage, and we'll drive forward, and we'll see a brighter tomorrow.
Well, thanks again, Todd, and appreciate your reminder, and thanks to all the veterans who turn in and all those veterans who don't turn in. So enjoy the time today on Veterans Day, and thanks for inviting me.
Yep. Thank you, Rocky. Have a good day.